Thanks, Mary, and thank you, Catherine and Kurt, for all your support and making this such an effective program. So I want to give you a little bit of background for those of you who weren't at the last conference on what we do and how that leads to the really boring part of this lecture, but important in terms of preserving data. So I worked on a NASA mission. I worked with the Department of Defense on STS-33. I grew up in Central Florida. I love hanging around the Cape there. Last time was great. My father's an aerospace engineer. He worked for Chrysler Missile. My Discovery shuttle, well, not mine, our Discovery shuttle, our launch vehicle, and his launch vehicle, the Redstone, are next to each other over in the National Air and Space Museum. He used to get down to Huntsville, where he said usually what the von Braun brothers, Magnus and Werner, would say, that's not the way we did it in Peenemünde. So he goes back quite a ways. But I've been working in cultural heritage for the past 25 years. What we do is apply science technology, whether it's from defense, whether it's from medicine, whether it's from physics, to the study of cultural heritage. We've worked with a range of artifacts from the draft, let's see, is that the, yep, draft, the Emancipation Proclamation of the National Archives, the stone copper plate of the Declaration of Independence, also the archives, early papyrus, to space artifacts, Harrison Schmidt's food packet that he signed, Robbins Medallions, including Apollo 11. Here we're using X-ray fluorescence, photographs such as of Gene Kranz there. And with that, we can use advanced imaging euphemistically, which is different wavelengths of light, different energy levels, to try to get more information. In the case of the draft, the Emancipation Proclamation, we found this fingerprint on it. We also found a thumbprint and 3 fingerprints on the Gettysburg Address, the Nicolay draft that was folded in thirds as if it was in someone's pocket going up to a cemetery in Pennsylvania. Also, signatures and authentication, whether it's photographs or that food pouch. Getting elemental information from the Robbins Medallions to, in particular, we were looking at Apollo 1, which was, or Apollo 7 and Apollo 1, which was the transition from the silver medallions of the Gemini era. They were actually not Robbins, I think spaceflight or whatever, to the Apollo medallions. So that's the type of work we do. We did not work on Spock's ears. The collector did not want to remove them from the plastic, so we did not work on Leonard Nimoy's props. So what we want to do is provide these data, we being us and the institution who's contracted us, or the private collector, for access and preservation, such as here, the patent to a flying machine filed by the Wright brothers, or granted to the Wright brothers, where we gain more information from the multispectral, where you can see some of the prior treatments of this historic document. Also worked with space artifacts, in this case, John Young's Apollo 16 lunar extravehicular activity visor, which he wore on the moon in Apollo 16 with the commander's red stripe there. So what we do, a lot of what we do is what we call multispectral imaging, where we will capture a stack of registered images, they all line up, in multiple wavelengths of light, your reds, your greens, your blues. But we also go into wavelengths of light which you cannot see with the human eye, the ultraviolet and the infrared. We use, for these images, I was using a 100 megapixel system. We now are up to 150 megapixel systems, but I just received a patent. We're working on a cell phone system where instead of me schlepping around 70 pounds of gear and $170,000 worth of kit, we can do it much cheaper, and it's not as hard on my back. So with that, we can do the same, what we call narrowband imaging, where in a dark room, we illuminate with different wavelengths of light, each of which gives us different types of information from an object. Then we can put those images together. I said they're registered images, and we can get more information. And you have to be aware, of course, because here we have, these are artifacts of the imaging process. Those are the reflections of the light. But from the beta cloth, you can get some of the lunar dust. You can see the different fluorescence and spectral response of the threads versus the Velcro versus the beta cloth versus the fiberglass there. Same with the signature and some of the scrubbing on the helmet. Now, different things respond in different wavelengths. This was a private collector had for provenance information on the Robbins Medallions. He was given by Gene Cernan a copy of his PPK kit contents. Well, Gene Cernan then used a black marker to censor, if you will, those personal items he didn't want to share at the time. After Gene Cernan died, the owner was interested in what actually was in that. So this is in a shorter wavelengths where most of the ink fades away, not that permanent marker. But in the longer wavelengths in the infrared, that marker faded away, and so we could then see what the personal items were, which were fairly innocuous. So as I said, we work in from the UV, from 365 nanometers up through into the infrared, up to 940 nanometers. That UV is fairly benign. It's not the one that's going to give you a sunburn. We do wear safety glasses to protect our retinas, in part because my sister's a retina specialist. But it is benign as far as the objects, and especially fragile objects, parchment, paper, that type of thing. Now, you may be more familiar with the much longer wavelengths, around 5,000 nanometers. These are thermal images. This is our group in the VAB last year. Pick yourself out from your body heat if you can. And so with that, you can detect thermal emissions. I've used this actually at home to detect a hot pole on a circuit breaker. But thermal, water, and there's other risks to objects, the actual physical object. So one risk to many collections is fire. This is the Anna Amalia Library in Weimar, Germany, where in 2004, they suffered a horrible fire just weeks before they were going to move into a more fireproof structure there. So it burned out the attic, a lot of musical scores there. While the firefighters were fighting up above, the townspeople were pulling everything out from below and putting it out on the town green. So when something's charred, can't get much from that. If it's singed, you can get more. So we were able to get information over in the singed areas that supported some of the musicians or people who study musical history. I don't. Same thing with the Cape Town University fire when a brush fire came down off Table Mountain there, destroyed some precious physical artifacts. Here again, teams of volunteers moving the objects out for triage. We've also worked with glass plate negatives up at Harvard University, Harvard's Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, where these astronomical plates, which are glass plates with an emulsion layer on one side, so a photographic film, if you will, were marked up by female computers. They couldn't be astronomers back at the turn of the 19th to 20th century, so they were computers, kind of like Hidden Figures here with NASA. And they would mark up the intensity and the spectral responses of these stars. And these are historic plates, not only for where are the constellations, constellations don't move, but galaxies and other astronomical objects. What are their characteristics over 100 years ago? And also for the historical information of these pioneering women. And some of these go back, this is 1936, I think, and first record of observing certain galaxies. So these are all in this as fireproof as they could make it building, and all these steel cases. They have all the markings and everything. Well, a major water pipe, a big water main, I think it was 15-inch, in the middle of the courtyard between those two buildings burst due to cold in Massachusetts, up in Cambridge, back in January of 2015, I think it was. Flooded 4 feet up. The plates, glass is okay. Emulsion, not so good. The paper around it would stick to it. So the physical objects were endangered by the water. Fortunately, it was very cold. Here again, teams of volunteers take everything outside, let it freeze, keep it frozen until you could treat it. These left zebra stripes across some of them, turned some of them brown. So we were able to recover both the astronomical features and the markups on the glass side. The emulsion side has the astronomical features, which you're seeing in the black and white here, and then the color would be marked on the other side, on the glass side. So we've got fire, we've got water, and ultimately we have human growth and destruction and rebuilding. This is Launch Complex 17. Roland has photos of many different launch complexes in his book. He'll be signing it this afternoon or this evening. So with the destruction of these, we're left sometimes with just the images, our record of the history of these sites, of these locations, these buildings, these human-created objects, and some natural objects too. So if we want a record of this, we have to go to the photographic record, which, is it preserved on film? Is it preserved digitally? Is it preserved orally? In terms of what Reagan was just talking about. And some cases, you can download good quality images. They're openly available. You can use them for whatever research or publication you wish. So there's some born digital, and there's analog that is converted to digital. Either way, the process, as Reagan cited, is similar. You have the collection, you're then processing the resulting images, and then analysis and the visualization. It could be the other way around. They're somewhat fungible. So with that, you think, okay, I've got the digitization process, but the key piece, and some of you have touched on this, Reagan cited it, is the data management. How are you going to manage? And you got to think about this up front before you even start collecting. What are you going to do with those data? How are you going to ensure they are going to be around for 5 years or 10 years, much less 100 years? So this is the challenge we face with these ephemeral bits of ones and zeros, is how do we preserve them? I work with parchment, basically well, I'm not wearing leather shoes, but basically shoe leather. And that's lasted from, the 6th century on up, and we're still working with it. These bits of ones and zeros are not, unless we make some effort, are not going to be preserved for future generations. So if you take that moon helmet, we took 5 different scenes of that moon helmet. Lunar, okay, LEVA if you want to be acronym specific in NASA-ese. From those, we had 185 gigabytes of data. Each stack of 5 had 25, 26 images, big data, 100 megapixel camera. So you have to manage all those images, and how you do that is important. And part of it is to manage the data and allow others to ensure that you can have access there. You go to websites, NASA has a way of getting the data. A lot of our data are at University of Pennsylvania, OPen, simple flat files. Others, there's some for sale, Getty Images, some are more clunky, some are, who is Meg, I think, cited clunky databases. Sometimes clunky is good, less is better sometimes. So NARA has theirs. So you have many different camera systems. Here we have 3 different camera systems. We have the 100 megapixel scientific camera, we have a commercial SLR, there's actually 2 cell phone cameras floating around there. This is in a Civil War house. It doesn't matter where it is, there are many ways of collecting the data. I cite this one because NCPTT gave a grant of $20K to look at mapping the walls of these Civil War houses. That led to an NEH grant, a National Endowment for Humanities, which led to another National Endowment for Humanities grant. So it doesn't matter whether you have 100 megapixel or 30 megapixel or 12 megapixel. You still need to ensure you store all those data in a standard format that people can access. People can access now, and people can access well into the future. And I think we've all cited this, Reagan cited this, the importance of standardizing your digital product, and using an established standard. Now, I asked someone, what about the old standards? Did a little looking. Linda Hall Library in Kansas City offers access to older standards. But we want to use established standards that are accessible to make sure the data are accessible. And the product needs to include key information about the image, about the object, and about how that was digitized and is being stored. And I'll go into this in a little more detail. So in terms of data management, we look at the simplicity of the files and the availability of the files. So metadata is a key part of that, describing those data and to ensure you have discovery and access. That long-term, the key bullet here, I don't like using bullet points, but I'm talking about data, can't just put pictures up. Long-term data set viability beyond the lifetime of current technologies. That's the challenge. What are the future technologies? And to ensure we don't get sucked into those future technologies. Okay, I want to do my oral histories with a hologram. Well, what standards do you have for that? How are you going to ensure those can be used in the future? I won't read all of this, you can read the paper, but the important thing is to make sure you can relate the digital object with the object, the physical object, to have good standard metadata that goes with that, and not to design it for a website. Less is more, because when you have simple data files, they're less likely to be obsolete in 3 to 5 years if you've designed that for a website. That's not to say don't make it inaccessible. You want the hooks there. If you have all the metadata there, if you have standard images there, then you will have that data available for people to glom onto for websites. So identify the digital object, describe it in objective terms. Don't make claims to that object that may be proven wrong later by academics or researchers. Give information about the file type and relate it to the object. And that might be through the same accession number for your file name or whatever it may be, and identify whatever standards and protocols you use. So for online storage and access, you want the broadly accepted standards, and you want it to live on its own. You have to be able to get out of the way. You're not going to be there. Your systems administrator's not going to be there. You get out of the way so that those will last in future. Provide a README file about the data. Put it out in simple file naming conventions, and provide open access. So make it available for others to use, which will help the preservation. So I cited OPEN, which is University of Pennsylvania. Everything's up there in flat files, 120 terabytes of data right now. Now, all these data were sucked down by Tencent. You may not be familiar with Tencent. One of the biggest gaming, video, and multimedia companies in the world. And they, a Chinese company, obviously, also working on AI. I don't know what they're going to do with 120 terabytes of data, much of which are ancient manuscripts, but more power to them. Some may say, oh, gee, they took all your data. Well, that's fine. It's stored geographically, separately. It may find a use. It may be more accessible to people in a game form, but we still have that basic data there at OPEN. There's interoperability standards that can be used. Ultimately, you have to look at diversity in your data storage, in your backup. This helps with that diversity. This is the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library, who've been preserving since the 1950s, since the Cold War, and they spread their data, including in a mountain in Utah. We are under threat. The British Library in October of last year was attacked by a ransomware attack. As a government entity, they could not pay the £600,000 ransom. They are down. They have been down as far as public access to their information for, well, it'll be a year before they get it back up. So that breach has restricted access. You cannot get access to much of the information. There's alternate access in different sites. JISC has some of them. There's various others. But if you want their 1,073,000, however many images, the only place you can go right now is Flickr. And that doesn't include all the metadata. Some of them, oddly enough, some of the Hebrew manuscripts, they were picked up on OPEN, and you can get them there. Same way, the gallery systems was hacked. That took down many of these museums. Christie's was attacked. And so with this, it's a demonstration of the threats we all face and the importance of getting the data out there and not having it located in a single site. Now, the problem is we say, oh, we want open access. How do we avoid the old adage, put in a quarter-inch steel box and don't let anyone into it, disconnect everything? So part of that is, and the British Library, I highly recommend their analysis of the lessons learned. But commercial cloud offers good opportunities for mitigation because, and I won't go into, they have more money. I won't go into a lot of detail here, but this is breaking the bank of the British Library. They're having to redo all their software, buy new software. There's trillions of dollars are being lost to cyber threat. Now, British Library budget, we don't need to go into the accounting, is down in the millions of dollars. And if you go to Google, we're talking billions of dollars. You go, and they are well aware of the threat they face. Amazon Web Services, billions of dollars. So if we invest in the cloud, it offers opportunity and commercial sector to, in addition to our own servers and institutions, that offers greater opportunity for mitigation of a threat like this. Because you're piggybacking on the large amounts of money that are being invested by the commercial vendors. So rather than isolate, preserve the data and metadata, keep it simple, back it up, and make it easy to download. And by making it accessible, making it easy to download, we can't prejudge how it's going to be used. Someone else is going to think about great uses for your data, and it's our responsibility to make it available. Thank you very much.